Welcome to Creepy, the best horror storyteller on YouTube.
The whirring of the ceiling fan mocked Ethan's terror. He woke up in a cold sweat, his heart a frantic drum solo against his ribs. A scream lodged in his throat, a desperate plea for help that refused to emerge. Panic clawed at him, each ragged breath a struggle against an invisible force. He was frozen, a fly trapped in amber, his mind wide awake while his body played a cruel trick. Then he saw him. A silhouette emerged from the shadows, coalescing into a horrifying reality. The pale man, the stuff of childhood nightmares, stood across the room. His skin was the sickly color of unbaked dough, stretched tight over gaunt cheekbones. Long, stringy black hair hung down his back like a mourning veil, framing eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian. A single, chilling smile split his face, revealing a set of teeth more akin to a shark's than a man's. Ethan tried to scream again, to scramble back from the approaching figure, but his limbs wouldn't obey. He was a puppet with severed strings. The man glided toward him, like a phantom traversing mist. His black suit, old-fashioned and worn, seemed to swallow the meager moonlight that dared to peek through Ethan's blinds. He stopped just inches from the bed, his smile stretching wider, revealing the points of his teeth that glinted with a sinister light. The stench hit Ethan then. It was a putrid cocktail of decay and mildew, the smell of a forgotten crypt. Bile rose in his throat, another strangled sound trapped within. The man leaned in, his breath rancid and hot, whispering promises of terror into Ethan's ear. "You've seen too much, haven't you, Ethan?" The voice was a dry rasp that sent shivers down Ethan's spine. "You were never meant to remember." Ethan, desperate to understand, to fight back, tried to force a response, but only a strangled moan escaped his lips. The pale man chuckled, a low, chilling sound that seemed to resonate from within his chest, vibrating through Ethan's body. "Oh, it's all right," the man continued, his voice a venomous caress. "There's time enough for explanations later." The man's hand shot out, long and bony with nails like black talons. It closed around Ethan's throat, squeezing with an unnatural strength. Panic turned into a searing terror, his lungs burning for air. He clawed at the hand, his own fingers weak and useless. Black spots danced behind his eyes, the world fading at the edges. Suddenly, a loud, insistent rapping sounded on his bedroom window. The pale man flinched, his grip loosening slightly. Relief, sweet and fleeting, flooded Ethan. Was it a dream? Was he waking up? But the rapping came again, more insistent this time. The pale man hissed, a sound like a snake disturbed in its den. He turned towards the window, his eyes burning with hatred. Then, with a final squeeze, he vanished. Ethan gasped, air rushing into his starved lungs. He coughed and wheezed, his body racked with tremors. As he struggled to regain his composure, he heard the rapping again, accompanied by a muffled voice calling his name. It was Sarah, his neighbor from across the hall, the one who always waved with a friendly smile, but whom Ethan had never spoken to. He managed to croak out a weak help. The window shattered, shards of glass raining down onto the floor. Sarah, silhouetted against the night sky, scrambled through the broken window, her face etched with concern. "Ethan! What's wrong?" Ethan, still gasping for breath, pointed towards the empty space where the pale man had stood moments ago. Sarah followed his gaze, her eyes widening in horror. He was here, wasn't he?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan could only nod, a cold dread settling in his stomach. The pale man was real, and Sarah knew it. She knew about the nightmares, The ones that had plagued him for weeks now, nightmares filled with shadows and whispers of a forgotten past. Together, they cleaned up the shattered glass, a nervous silence hanging heavy in the air. Sarah, despite her fear, seemed determined to help. She explained how she too had been plagued by nightmares lately, dreams of the same pale man, dreams that seemed to tie back to a horrifying event in their childhood that both had repressed. As the night wore on, Sarah shared stories of a fire, an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town, and a chilling legend about a man who made deals in the darkness, a man known only as the Nightmare Weaver. The pieces of the puzzle began to click into place for Ethan. The nightmares, the pale man, it was all connected to something from their forgotten past. Driven by a desperate need for answers and a flicker of hope to banish the nightmares, Ethan and Sarah embarked on a journey to the abandoned house on the outskirts of town. The house loomed on the horizon, a skeletal silhouette against the pale dawn sky. It was a monstrous Victorian mansion, its once grand facade now marred by chipped paint and boarded-up windows. Vines choked the overgrown yard, and an oppressive silence hung heavy in the air. A shiver ran down Ethan's spine as they approached the house. The air grew colder, and a strange, unsettling hum seemed to emanate from within the decaying structure. Sarah gripped his arm tightly, her face pale. "Are you sure about this, Ethan?" she whispered. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. "We have to face him, Sarah. We have to remember." With a shared look of determination, they pushed open the creaking front door. A wave of dust assaulted them, filled with the musty scent of neglect and decay. Sunlight barely penetrated the grime-coated windows, casting long, distorted shadows that danced on the walls. The air hung thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the creak of their footsteps on the warped floorboards. They ventured deeper into the house, each creaking floorboard and rustling cobweb heightening their sense of unease. The deeper they went, the stronger the hum grew, wrapping around them like a malevolent aura. They finally arrived at a large, dusty room at the end of a darkened hallway. The hum was deafening here, resonating through their very bones. In the center of the room stood a simple wooden table, a single black candle flickering atop it. As they approached, the flame danced wildly, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. A sudden gust of wind, unseen and unwelcome, blew through the room, extinguishing the candle and plunging them into darkness. Panic clawed at Ethan's throat. He fumbled for his phone, its weak flashlight beam cutting through the suffocating darkness. The beam fell upon a figure standing across the room. The pale man. A cold smile stretched across his face, even more unsettling in the darkness. "Welcome back, children," he rasped, his voice echoing in the vast room. "You shouldn't have come." Ethan and Sarah stood frozen, fear paralyzing them. The pale man, the Nightmare Weaver, was here, and he seemed far more powerful in this place, his form seeming to coalesce from the shadows. But then, Sarah, her voice shaking but filled with defiance, spoke. "We remember now, don't we, Ethan?" Ethan felt a spark ignite within him, a flicker of memory pushing through the years of repression. He remembered the fire, the screams, the feeling of helplessness. He remembered the pale man, feeding on their fear, weaving nightmares from their trauma. "We remember your cruelty," Ethan shouted, his voice hoarse but strong. The pale man's smile faltered for a moment, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. He raised a hand, silencing them with a gesture. "Memories are fickle things," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "Easily twisted, easily forgotten." But Sarah wouldn't back down. "Not this time," she said, her voice gaining strength. "We face our fears, and we break your hold on us." As she spoke, a faint golden light began to emanate from her hands. It grew stronger, pushing back the darkness that seemed to cling to the room. The pale man recoiled, hissing like a serpent struck. Ethan, emboldened by Sarah's bravery, felt a warmth spreading through him, a forgotten courage rising to the surface. He reached out with his mind, focusing on the memory of the fire, the fear, the injustice. And then he pushed back. A wave of golden light erupted from him, joining Sarah's, bathing the room in a blinding radiance. The pale man shrieked, a sound of pure unadulterated terror. He writhed and contorted as the light engulfed him, his form shrinking, his power fading. With a final, ear-splitting scream, the pale man vanished, leaving behind only an echoing silence. The golden light slowly receded, revealing a dusty room bathed in the soft glow of dawn filtering through the grime-coated windows. Exhausted but exhilarated, Ethan and Sarah collapsed onto the floor. They had faced their nightmares, remembered their past, and broken the hold of the nightmare weaver. The oppressive silence was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and newfound strength. They knew the nightmares might return, whispers from the shadows, but they were no longer alone. They had each other, and the memory of their courage, a shield against the darkness. They had faced the nightmare weaver and emerged victorious, the golden light of their defiance a beacon against the monsters that lurk in the corners of the mind.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more similar horror stories.